5 warning signs from Tinder swindler documentary that actually could have been prevented had these women only known these 5 things. My dear elegant ladies, welcome back to a new video. Ladies, I watched a documentary called Tinder Swindler and it's currently a really hot topic right now. I do recommend all of you to see it, but today I really want to share those 5 important warning signs from the interaction of this type of character that was featured in this documentary. Because ladies, truly, this could have been prevented. Now a little disclaimer, due to the fact that the Tinder Swindler never was sentenced for the crimes in this documentary, he is still claiming he is innocent and that these women made everything up to defame him. For this reason, I'm not claiming that these are facts. This is just my analysis of this documentary. End of disclaimer. So what was this documentary about and why is everybody talking about it? Well, first of all, it was a very well-made documentary about this man who positioned himself on Tinder as being this affluent jet setter, this billionaire son. And obviously he was having this profile where it really looked like he was who he claimed he was. He had over 100,000 followers on Instagram. If you would Google him, he looked absolutely legit. Allegedly, he conned many women, and the sum went up to 10 million, which is a lot of money. So how he would con these women were by the same strategy applied to all of them. He would enter in a relationship or friendship with them, then it will take a little bit of time to build up trust, and once the trust was established, he would begin the con by pretending he was in trouble and needed help by asking these women to lend him money. Now, because he was this wealthy character, he seemed very legit, so these women had no doubts that he was ever going to have problems paying them back. Of course, we all know that the payback never happened. And this documentary follows the journey of these women. So that is the background, ladies, but I want to jump straight into what those warning signs are, because I don't want any of you to ever end up in a situation like this. And unfortunately, it's easily done when we don't have the education or the life experience, or maybe when we just believe in the best in everyone and think that these things only happens in movies. However, it's not true. This can happen to anyone, especially now with online dating. We don't know who we're dealing with. So here are the 5 warning signs. Warning sign number 1. Now, I'm not going to make any claims whether the person in this documentary fits into this or not. So I'm not making this point specifically about him. However, based on my research on the subject and also some personal experience, we need to talk about the narcissist, the psychopath, and the sociopaths. Because in order to be able to read the warning signs, one has to be really educated and know what is a narcissist, what is a psychopath, what is a sociopath. A woman, every woman out there, need to be able to know what are the warning signs that one person is any of these. And the reason why I'm saying this is because, ladies, oftentimes behind the con is a character of this sort. I'm not saying every time, of course, but there is a high likelihood of that. So you need to know the signs of a narcissist or a psychopath, let's say, in order to prevent and protect yourself from meeting one, because they exist in our society. I'm sure we all come across them at some point in our lives. I think the stats are saying that psychopaths up to 4.5% or 5%, and narcissists up to 5% in our society. So I do believe that every woman needs to be able to list the traits literally in her sleep, because that's the only time you will have your alarm bells ringing when you are encountering one. Obviously, it's not that straightforward always, but we need to educate ourselves. Also, you need to know that not all narcissists and psychopaths are going to be malignant and toxic and committing crimes. Of course not. There are some highly functioning psychopaths and narcissists in our society that are good citizens. But of course, before you take my advice, seek out a therapist, read on this subject to really make sure you identify who you're dealing with. Warning sign number 2. Now, ladies, Are you perhaps the perfect prey for them? Now you may be confused, why is a warning sign now all about you? Now, one thing that I do get upset with this documentary is that, of course, the women who were conned, they have received hate. People calling them stupid, naive, not seeing the warning signs. Some even claim them to be gold diggers because they were all up for this glitzy fantasy to be real. Now, I do think it's important to understand why these women were targeted, but it's not about blaming them. After all, they were victims. They didn't deserve this. They were not stupid. What happened is that maybe they lacked the education, the experience, who knows? But truly, ladies, this can happen to anyone. As an example, maybe they couldn't read the warning signs because they didn't have that education. That's why, ladies, everyone needs to educate themselves. Now, I really don't like that some of the critique that they get is that it's apparently common sense to know everything and not end up in a situation like that. And this is where I want to give this example, because what's common sense for you might not be common sense for me. I mean, I see it in my teachings as an example. Let's say I teach some basic etiquette rule like don't speak with your mouth full of food as an example. For many people, this is common sense. But do you know how many people still do this, still keep breaking this rule without knowing about it, even though it's common sense? I do believe that con men scout their victims and they will not con anyone out there. I think there are many qualities that they look for. One is that they look for women who trust easily. I also do think that they look for women who perhaps have some form of desperation in them. Whether that is to have a desperation to live, this lavish lifestyle, or to fall in love, or to get married, or, whatever. And then they play on this desperation and lure them to lower their guard completely, because that's when it's the perfect time for them to strike. Why do you think I keep telling you on this channel that we are not desperate on this channel? Desperation leads to danger, ladies. You might be thinking now that the desperation that I'm talking about is some extreme desperation where someone would do anything for something. But no, actually, dangerous desperation can even be so subtle when there's this small feeling inside you, when you start compromising on your own values or on your own boundaries, and when you start to dismiss warning signs. An example can be like in the documentary. The woman gets so excited that this man invites her on their first meeting to travel with him the same day in a private jet to another country. The desperation in her makes her literally run home as quickly as possible to pack her bags and then ignore all the red flags, even though her friends even tell her to be careful, because she's so excited about this opportunity and she really doesn't want to miss out. So I'm not saying that she's this, desperate, low-caliber woman. But what happens is that when you are too eager for something, it turns into some form of desperation. So her need for this experience and for this Prince Charming became so strong, even stronger than sticking to her own values and principles that are meant to keep her safe. I want you to know that this is not uncommon. I've had this myself in the past, so I've learned from my mistakes, and I still keep seeing this everywhere. When you want something so badly, you're willing to compromise yourself to get it. And it's important, ladies, to be self-aware and to stay grounded, because you cannot get carried away in such way. It can become dangerous. Plus also, don't forget that men can smell desperation in a woman, and a malignant type is going to take advantage of that. So this is why, ladies, it's very bad to be showing your eagerness to someone that you don't even know, because it's always going to put you in a bad position. And unfortunately, the current dating climate is really challenging for women in particular, because, the rise of online dating and the rise of hookup culture. For this reason, it's so much more difficult for women today to be more selective and restricting, even though I do believe and advise you that you should be, because there is too much competition out there, because most women are just one click away to replace you, or, for men, it's an abundance of women out there. So the grounds are so much more competitive for women today than they have ever been before. I mean, look just, let's say, 60, 70 years ago. The climate was so different, and women did have a different upper hand when it comes to getting commitment out of the relationship and not having to sacrifice their own boundaries or values in order, to get this commitment. Plus, we live in these times where hookup culture has become so normalized and celebrated, even in pop culture. Women are not even thinking about the consequences for being part of this hookup culture. And I'm not saying now that women shouldn't have fun and enjoy themselves. I am more concerned that women biologically have a disadvantage and a bigger vulnerability that make them lose more in the hookup culture than the man. So in the end, what happens is that because there is this disadvantage for women as a response lower their expectations and they compromise on their values, they compromise on their boundaries, and this causes desperation. Warning sign number 3. If someone moves really quickly with you in the beginning, ladies, be careful. In the documentary, the man literally sent her one message straight to the point, kind of let's meet. No getting to know each other whatsoever. She goes and sees him, and in the first meeting, he invites her to travel with him the same day. On top of it, if we fast forward a bit, we also see how he starts sending her flowers, he starts showering her with this attention. Here is this Prince Charming coming and giving her the entire dream and so much attention, so much love, so much, who would want to back away from that when it's so difficult in today's dating climate to meet a decent man? What you need to know is that they are oftentimes doing this type of manipulation strategy. It's also called love bombing. So you do this to manipulate someone into a relationship because this makes them, of course, lower their guard. And it's incredibly effective with women because we often dream of this attention and of the whole commitment thing. So how love bombing works is that it can be done in all kinds of different methods. As an example, it can be done with words. Maybe some person is flattering you a lot, giving you a lot of that praise. Maybe painting the picture of some perfect future together. It can also be done with monetary methods. Maybe showering you with gifts. Maybe inviting you to some incredible experiences or travel. It can also be simply by taking things to the next level very quickly in a relationship. Other methods of love bombing can be just to simply be texting a lot, showing a lot of attention, affection, you name it. Now, it doesn't mean that every time this happens in a relationship, it's always going to be some malignant person doing it as a method for manipulating you. No. But there's still a warning sign in it, and you need to read those warning signs. And then what happens is that you also need to put, one warning sign together with another warning sign with another one. So it's not just by this one thing, then, okay, wow, they just did this one thing, and then, of course, they must be toxic and malignant. No, of course, it's not that easy. That's why you put 2 and 2 together, and you do your research, and you are staying cautious, etc. The reason why I'm making these videos is because I really don't want you to make mistakes on the journey forward, especially when you're trying to level up and you're trying to live your best life. So in my brand new workshop called How I Went from Broken Awkward to $1 Million Life, I actually share some of those really bad mistakes that I have done on this journey because I want you to learn from my mistakes so that you don't have to make them too. Visit levelupsecret.com and join this workshop. It's absolutely free of charge and it's going to go away, so make sure you register today. Warning sign number 4. Now, ladies, let's have a little look at the person who was featured in the documentary series. Let's check out his Instagram profile, because as of a few days ago, his Instagram profile was still active. However, now I'm not sure if it still is. I've heard something that it got shut down by Instagram. But my question is, before we inspect this, if you were on Tinder and this person's profile came up and he sends you a message and you check out his Instagram profile and you are seeing this, would you go on a date with him? Be honest and leave me a comment. I want to hear from you, ladies. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about this person in the documentary, but I do find his Instagram profile to actually be quite a good example of Instagram accounts to really be suspicious of. It doesn't mean that everyone who is this flashy, who has these type of pictures, we see many private jet pictures there, we see exotic cars, we see designer logos, labels, you name it. But clearly we can see that someone here is trying hard to make a point. Doesn't mean everyone now is going to be a scammer or a fake or fraudster of some sort, but it is suspicious. Now, there could be, of course, many reasons to why a man would curate such an Instagram presence of himself. Maybe it is because he is fake rich or he's part of some sort of scheme. However, it's of course common that sometimes the person is just incredibly insecure and needs to overly prove to the world that they've got something, and for this reason trying to make a point. I personally find that this is an incredible turnoff. I have also, during my single days back in the days, come across men of this kind. Once I actually went on a date with a man who had a very similar profile. Now, it wasn't the same person though as in the documentary, and I just remember that this person was so different in person. He was kind of weird, almost like a bit creepy. Not at all how you would imagine him to be. As an example, the entire date he just spoke all the time about himself, his bragging. He was also rude to service staff. At some point he even got a bit aggressive. You know, just a bunch of warning signs, and clearly after one date I never saw him again. I want you to be careful with people like this. Always look for someone who is not this showy. Always try to go for more discreet people. Because if a man, let's say during your date, will also be showing, you know, his items, maybe showing off who he is, who he knows, these are also some really big signs that you need to be aware, because he's trying to overprove himself for some specific reason that can be suspicious. So be attentive. Now, last but not least, warning sign number 5. Ladies, if someone wants to borrow money from you, be suspicious, especially if it's early in the relationship. Now, I do know that, of course, there will be genuine people who will need real help, but you need to really evaluate the situation properly. If someone happens to ask you, evaluate your relationship first and foremost. Also look at the request being made. Is it a weird ask or is it a normal ask? Because if someone is asking you to use, let's say, your savings, or you to take loans or pawn some items, then you might be in for someone who is trying to con you. I hope you have enjoyed my analysis of the Tinder swindler. If you enjoy these Netflix analyses that I'm making, then you have to watch my next one, where I analyze Georgina Rodriguez, the girlfriend of Cristiano Ronaldo. Now hop on over to that video because I will see you there.